Well, hello, everyone. And on behalf of our IACP leadership and our 31,000 fellow members, welcome to this webinar. Today, we're going to preview the upcoming IACP Technology Conference, and we'll do it by touching upon a few of just the dozens of critical opportunities and technology trends and issues facing the world's police forces. We'll do this through the eyes of IACP Law Enforcement Information Technology Section and Board chairpersons who you're going to meet in just a minute. My name is Patrick Doyle, and I'm a retired New Jersey State Trooper. I now work for the Unisys Corporation, but more importantly, I serve as the vice chair of the CJIS committee, one of the committees I spoke of. So I serve under Chairwoman Bonnie Locke. So before we begin, just let me remind you that the full IACP Technology Conference with dozens of interesting presentations, some great keynote speakers, and all the discussions to go along with it, that will be online for 2020, and registration is now open. The IACP.org /tech-conference, but you can find it. IACP.org will get you there. And everything, including cybersecurity, digital asset management, building technology budgets, artificial intelligence, information sharing, as usual, will be well explored. And don't forget, it'll be an international perspective because we're an international organization. So there are lots of many industry innovations which will also be discussed. So without further ado, let me introduce you to our expert panelists who will be part of this webinar and this preview. Representing, I think we'll start with Jim Emerson, representing the Cyber and Computer Crimes Committee. Jim will be speaking in a few minutes, and we'll also have Committee Chairperson, Lieutenant Colonel Craig Allen. I should have mentioned Jim is also a retired Lieutenant Colonel from the Marine Corps. Craig Allen retired from Illinois State Police. He'll be on representing the Technology Committee. And we're also going to hear from Dan Mahoney, who's going to speak from the board position. Dan is the Deputy Director of the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center. So he's going to talk from the board perspective of LEIM. And I'll add some commentary on behalf of Bonnie about CJIS Committee projects and things like that. So once again, let me thank our panel of experts for their participation in the webinar and invite you to join along with these leaders and the whole LEIT section and other members of IACP and of course all our technology partners for the technology conference. That's upcoming May 17th through the 19th. Don't forget to register. So let's get right to summaries, perhaps, gentlemen. We'll start with summaries of each of the committees or things that you're looking after in terms of technology for IACP. So I guess we'll start off with Lieutenant Colonel Emerson. If Jim, you'd give us a rundown of what you're looking at and how you see the world from your committee's perspective in regards to technology.
Thanks, Pat. I'll make 4 quick points. One is the Computer Crime Digital Evidence Committee has continued down 2 kind of converging trails. One on digital evidence and one on security and integrity and resilience. With regard to digital evidence, I think it's important to understand that we've hit a nexus where cybersecurity and digital evidence are now clearly partners as it relates to the larger data set within an agency. Whether it's digital evidence that was intended to be stored as digital evidence or whether they're business records that might actually become digital evidence later, there's still a concern about the integrity of that data set anywhere it might reside on a network or an enterprise. The second issue that I'll talk a little bit about is the issue of access to digital evidence. That continues to be a challenge for a lot of agencies. The privacy theme, which is wrapped within a lot of the different presentations here at the tech conference, presents itself as technology tends to feel more and more intrusive. That's borne out by legislation and case law. And so agencies are dealing with the outcome of that in trying to figure out how to be particular about what they do and how they do it, and to be very transparent in that regard. And then finally, I will say that certain emerging technologies have provided us with cause to want to understand them better, whether it's vehicle technology, telematics. There's a tremendous amount of data sourcing from lots of different directions. It could be the police fleet, could be the cars in your community, could be something as very specific as autonomous vehicles that are out there performing either commercial or private functions with regard to their ability to collect high definition video and provide sources of information for these agencies. So there's a lot of meat to chew on here, and I'm going to turn it over to our next distinguished chair.
Before you do that, I cut off half of his charge, and I said to Lieutenant Colonel Allen it was just a technology community, communications and technology. I didn't mean to cut about 50% of what you do. So LTC, if you would, pick up on what Jim said. Tell us what you're working on and maybe how they interrelate.
Yeah, we find that our groups bump into each other quite often. Jim and I are on regular conversations about the different bleed overs that go on. Not like the days in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Technology has really sort of exploded around us, and we see it getting even richer. So what we've done is we've established a series of subcommittees that dive into most of the things that touch on, from our committee's perspective, the LEIT. First, NG 911. Second is artificial intelligence. Third is cybersecurity as it relates to the police chief. Jim's team has pretty much everything else, but we're trying to figure out how cybersecurity can work in that 10 to 15 person department at the same elegant and graceful way it needs to in a much larger organization. We then have drones and UAS, and it's not how to drive them, it's getting the data to and from them. The whole spectrum issue, which is another committee. We have a subcommittee on dealing nothing but FCC issues. And just in this last 12-month period, every one of those has seen an enormous growth and interest by the membership. As Jim said, we see the future as being even brighter in communications and technology because we're now probing around in the cloud computing, and what does that mean? Not getting in Jim's lane at all, but what does that mean for the police chief in cloud computing? And then what does that mean as we drive into smart cities and Wi-Fi and small cells? And so the deployment across both the communication and technology is very robust. And I think there's going to be a lot of red meat to talk about here, not the least of which is what do we do with, how do we get the money for this stuff now, particularly with the pandemic and some other things that have gone down. So much federal money has gone out. We're not sure what that means for grants, but kind of what does that look like at the local level, and how do they fund and make these things come together as they need to serve their constituency? Thank you for the opportunity to participate on this.
Sure. And Craig, we want to circle back onto the money issue and how it relates to technology. Maybe we'll do that as a whole when we finish. Before Dan comes in from the board perspective at a little higher level, visibility to what IACP is interested in and what we're all doing, I thought I'd give you a brief update of CJIS, the CJIS committee, which in some cases is maybe the connection between the Technology and Communications Committee and Jim's committee, what they're doing in some cases, because it is about the data, even though we don't focus as much on the actual technology. We're looking at, so CJIS is, Bonnie has us in similar fashion to Craig's committee, working in sub-working groups or working groups, not sub-working groups. And we're looking at a tech resource guide, some place that chiefs can go to and executives of law enforcement around the world to look at. It's a very confusing place. Is there some place where a lot of this can be collected so they can look at technology and say, I need to do this. How does, what would be available, or to make alignments? So that's some project we're working on now. The other one is a mobile best practices, kind of revisiting that because it was done several years ago, and we're trying to say, data, CJIS data, any law enforcement data, depending on your country or your region, your protected law enforcement data is in much more demand to be used in a mobile sense out in the field. But how do you protect that? And so we're looking at mobile best practices using the technologies that you gentlemen oversee, and how can data flow through those in a safe way? Because we want the data to be out there on these devices, and we want them to be secure, as Jim has said. And then data integrity, which is a different topic altogether. We're looking at maintaining data integrity wherever it is. And that's not necessarily just the protection of it from theft or procurement by bad actors. It's if I loan you my data, does the same integrity carry on into your system as we work jointly? And we're also have our own spinoff of an international working group because we're trying to take the CJIS mentality, mostly US based. Canada has a certain version of that, and look into international chiefs environments and see if we can't find best practices already in use in other places. So we're looking at it from an international perspective, as is IACP. So that's how we kind of connect the first two speakers together, the CJIS committee. And then to further connect us, I think, Dan, it would be perfect for you to come in and say, what are you seeing from a board perspective? What are the projects that you see that maybe we aren't, that are a part of the board and aren't in one of our committees? And just your take on technology as from an IEC piece perspective. So, Dan.
Yeah, well, thank you, Patrick. Yeah, my name is Daniel Mahoney. I'm Deputy Director at the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, as Patrick said, which is one of the 80 fusion centers located around the United States and the territories. Prior to that, I'm a retired captain with San Francisco Police Department, and I bring that up only because I've been able to see the technology realm and the pluses and minuses, what the needs are, the impacts on law enforcement from not only the state and local level, but also the national level now through the Fusion Center network. And it's through those lenses that I've been able to bring the idea and the issues of law enforcement technology forward, not only at, like I said, not only at the local level, but also at the national level. So as a board, first of all, I find myself very fortunate. I'm the current chair right now for the Law Enforcement Intelligence Technology section. And I will be the outgoing chair by the conclusion of this conference, and George Perea will be coming in as the incoming chair. So what's nice is he and I have had quite a bit of discussion so that we hopefully will have a very seamless transition and able to keep the priorities of the board moving forward. Several of our priorities are having to do with just keeping the idea of technology for law enforcement relevant and in conversation. We feel that this is a time where technology is extremely important, extremely relevant for a number of reasons, one of which you're seeing this year a defund movement, which we've never seen before. So it's, once again, how to be able to do the job that the public expects and demands, but do it in a way that's cost effective, perhaps because some agencies may be finding their budgets dwindle, but still being able to get the job done. Privacy is a big concern because you're hearing about that more so in the forefront these days than it's always been important, but I think you're hearing it more now than you did before. So looking at the use of technology through the lens of privacy is also a goal that the board has. The board is very fortunate, and we know that daily, that we've got people like Jim Emerson, Bonnie Locke, and Craig Allen running the committees that they run. They're just top-notch folk. And they're really you'll hear from them extensively, and you'll hear all about the different aspects of technology and the different projects they're working on, and everything is today with an eye toward tomorrow. That's what's beautiful about the work that they're doing. It's all timely, it's actionable, and it's relevant. And that's what the board has been, I don't want to say focusing on, but is very appreciative of the work that they're doing. But that is the expectation, that we're not talking about yesterday's technology, we're talking about today's and into tomorrow. Secondly, because of this push, the board wants to make sure that conversations are flowing. We've instituted a quarterly newsletter that gets posted on IACP's Connect system for you to look at, and you can able to see now who's on there, who's on the board, who are the committee folk, what they're working on, and some of the relevant topics that's out there. And finally, the board is very, very active in making sure that we're bringing in the most appropriate speakers at the highest level with relevant topics for not only for this technology conference coming up, but also for the technology arm at the full annual conference that's going to be held later on this year. In each time, we've looked at over 200 submissions and cherry-picked, if you would, topics that we believe that would be most relevant, and the speakers that we believe will connect with the attendees more so than ever before. That's the beauty of having so many submissions, is we're able to really pick from the best. So that's what the board is basics focus on for right now anyway. We want people to join. We want people to join the section because and get the benefit from the section, from learning what we're working on, and just having access to all the different communication platforms and the information that we're putting out.
Dan, you can love it all because you're at the board level. I'm going to put the other chairs on the spot in a moment. I'll give them a second to think about it. I'm going to ask them to pick one or two things that they just wouldn't miss for this upcoming technology conference. So think about that, gentlemen. I'll tell you what I think my favorite is going to be. I mean, there's at least 35 educational programs that are going to be conducted. So there's plenty for everybody. And as Dan said, it's really all inclusive, but we do have some of our favorites and things that we're not going to want to miss. I'm going to give you my 1, 2, and then Craig and Jim can tell me what they're thinking, and maybe 1, 2, 3. Go a little deeper than 1, 2, but something that you think is out there for people that maybe adjoins your committee, your work. Maybe you're a speaker on, or one of your subordinates on the committee are going to be part of an educational session. Catherine DeBole is one of the keynote speaker of the tech conference. She led the Belgian Federal Police and just has an unbelievable resume. And I just can't wait to hear what she says from a global perspective, because what pandemic has taught us, we are really one big world here. This is we've been connected by a virus. Maybe that's what it took, but ICP has always been that connective tissue between the world's police forces. And I just want to hear her perspective, because it's an important one from Europe and from Europol. She's currently executive director of Europol. I'm not sure if I mentioned that. So I'm all about hearing what she has to say about the way in which we're one big policing community. Of course, differences between the nations and the regions within a nation, but I just think that's just an important discussion you won't want to miss. And the second thing is making a little props for my friend, Lieutenant Colonel Allen, but managing cost and the risk, and managing risk as it relates to cost during the general session. We'll hear from Craig and Jim also on that, and a host of other folks that are, okay, we can't defend against everything, but how do we manage cost of protecting our digital world with the risk thereof? So those are two of my favorites. So I hope you're ready. Craig, let's start with you. Other than the one I named, which you're on, what else for this technology conference would you not want to miss?
I am really looking forward to the artificial intelligence presentations. There's we have, as I said, we've got a subcommittee that works in that space, and I am really impressed. I'm going to use a term here: high speed, low drag. The people that are active in that space internationally. We've got a Canadian representative. We've got obviously representative from the States, but just everything from how we define the terminology. When we talk about it, what exactly are we talking about, up through how do we use deep learning? So machine learning, deep learning, how do we use it? What can we do with it today? That's one aspect, but really what does it look like when you peek into that crystal ball over the next 24, 36, 60 months? And what does that do for policing? And what do we need to be thinking about so that we don't alienate particular groups that may feel like that somehow the police aren't being as forthright or maybe as transparent. So just because we think we are, I think that's one of the discussions I'm really looking forward to. The other one is digital evidence, because everything's going digital. If we haven't yet, we will be. And how we protect that, and how we keep things like solar winds and other elements that keep pecking at us from the outside, from really negatively affecting the holistic approach to policing. If we lose evidence, then we lose cases, and we can't expect the public to have faith in us if we can't take care of our work. And so that digital evidence piece, I think, is critical to the next short term in policing, but really the long term of policing as we begin to grow into it. Those would be my top two. Since you took away one of them, I was going to speak about.
Good choices, sir. Very good choices. Plenty to choose from, though, for this tech conference, but those are good choices. Jim, how about you? Give me top two. Maybe give me three. Go a little deeper. Tell me what your three things are you wouldn't miss.
Well, Pat, I've lost three now, so thank you to you and Craig. Yeah,
well, there's 32 more just on the base educational discussions, plus plenty of other side discussions that'll occur, and vendors that'll talk about the latest and greatest. But all right, so give me at least a couple.
So I'm going to take a theme through a couple of topics that I think is pretty prominent right now. As agencies are trying to be good stewards, they're working diligently to maintain trust with their constituents, the people that they protect. At the same time, the proliferation of technology, people are very aware of this. They understand what's going on. There's a huge concern about privacy. So transparency as it relates to what agencies are doing, how they're implementing technology, what they're going to use it for, what they've stated to their communities they are not going to use it for, formal review, oversight, audit controls. As we look at the privacy issues, there's a bunch of different presentations and tracks here with regard to different technologies, whether that's an autonomous vehicle, whether we're talking about facial rec, recognition and some of the legislative occurrences which have had recent impact on our use of some of those technologies. So, these presentations are very, very interesting to me because they're kind of bridging the gap between the trust that we're trying to build and maintain with that community and how we really know we need to be efficient and economic in using technology to get the job done, to accomplish the mission, to protect the people out there so they're not victimized. And when they are, that we can actually investigate effectively and litigate appropriately. I think really the second area is kind of a competing strand that Craig touched on a little bit, and that is, and he said it about his committee earlier when he talked about a subcommittee that they run, and that is small agencies have always been out there struggling to do what every other agency does. They do it with less resources. They have to do it as part of a fabric of partnering and mutual aid, or maybe part of a county structure or state structure of resources. I think some of the cybersecurity discussions that are going to go on around small agencies, those kind of capabilities to protect the same types of data, let's face it, they're a link in a chain. And so when that small agency is exposed, then potentially the entire chain is exposed. As Craig pointed out, SolarWind points that out. The BlueLeaks data breach in 2020 points that out very, very clearly. So, I mean, they're all compelling topics that I would encourage everybody to go, get deeply immersed in and see what comes of those presentations.
Yeah, also a good choice. I can't dispute any of these choices, by the way, so far. I will say that, don't forget the committee members will be a part of many of the presentations, and those are your fellow IACP members that work as hard as you can imagine on research topics. In fact, the CJIS committee, as Jim mentioned, we did a facial recognition use case catalog, which was just wildly popular. Looked at it, not so much from the technology standpoint, but where technology meets policy. And that's out there. All of this is of course, available on IACP website. But we also did an LPR survey, which is out there. And we're currently determining how we're going to reveal that, or how we're going to create a document which discusses the results of how technology is deployed and where maybe it's not deployed so perfectly. And our members, other chiefs and other police executives and industry folks have looked at it and said, wow, this survey says, and so we'll be discussing that. And there's all sorts of other things we'll talk about, which are technology related to the world and technology related to policy. And then the topic I want to get to now, if we've got a few minutes, gentlemen, is how does all of this relate to what it costs and available funding? I think we see, at least in the US and many of the world's nations are saying, we've got to do some sort of justice reform. We've got to stay ahead of the criminal. So we've got to spend some money. Just each one of you maybe touch on why you think it's important for police executives and industry folks to attend this technology conference, to be sure that when they're able to spend, they can spend wisely, because we do believe some money is coming, but the expectation is it'll be used wisely. So in no particular order, somebody jump on that. How does the tech conference relate to proper expenditure of monies that will come for technology?
So Pat, I'm just going to take off first on efficiency, because I know Craig is the ones and zeros guy when it comes to ledgers, and he understands that world quite well, and I respect that. I think from an efficiency standpoint, when you take on, like the city of Philadelphia and the federal government just announced creation of a gun task force. A lot of gun violence occurring in the city of Philadelphia. When I start thinking about if I were part of that task force, I start thinking immediately in pretty much the majority of those cases, there's a likelihood there's going to be vehicle evidence, mobile device evidence, and video evidence. From the perspective of the tracks that are being presented here, if we're looking for efficiency and avoiding a lot of the heavy lift that comes with these rashes of gun violence and the unfortunate outcome, there's a lot of benefit and efficiency to be had in the technologies that we're talking about. And I'll leave it there.
Well, Jim,
Greg,
I'm going to jump on that. Right, the ones and zeros is not as strong as you might think, but I will go in along with you on the efficiencies. From the years I've been coming to the tech conference, one of the things I've always taken away is the diversity of how we do things, or even how other countries do things that we hadn't quite thought of, or with a slight oblique angle would enhance the efficiencies that Jim just spoke of. So it doesn't matter what area you're dealing with. I find it interesting to talk to the city managers, particularly if you can get them from different states, because it's almost sometimes like you're talking to people from demonstrably different worlds. And so the same thing with police and technology. How it gets applied in one place may not work in another because laws may prevent it. The city council or the state law won't allow it. But it doesn't mean that it won't have an opportunity to present itself in an oblique way going forward in some other methodology. Imagine where we would have been had ShotSpotter and things like that not at least been cracked open and deployed. And now some of the things we're seeing in some of the foreign countries, they are planning on nesting drones that will deploy without drivers to get information as quickly as possible in a triangulated approach. It's just mind-boggling compared to what some of the limitations we have to deal with here in the States. So not wrong, just different, but there's some really great cross-pollination that can go on. So Patrick, that would be, from the financial perspective, if you can come back and show how I can get more stuff and not have to lay somebody off, or get more stuff and still be able to hire for those vacancies. Because face it, when you see a constriction in budget, the first thing you see is no new hiring. The second thing you see is layoffs. And the third thing you see, so we're looking for ways to put those two at bay with not necessarily a low cost, but a real cost technology that can come in and enhance all the officers or all the administrative duties. That's another back end piece to this that we really need to think about. We have to talk about it here. It's not the pointy end of the spear, but this is technology and it works on the back office too. Is there ways that we can reduce the obligation to increase man hours for other things?
So technology can definitely solve some of the problems that are inevitable, right, Craig? I mean, in other words, you have to stay with technology as your go-to, because just building out larger police departments, it's not only not probably politically doable, technology is being used by criminals. So we have to be there with the technology to match or exceed their abilities, right? I mean,
the numbers are this. If you can, as a chief fiscal officer, if you can show me something that is a one-time purchase, it's got a short financial tail to it, $10 to get started and 50 cents to keep it running, that is a commitment that's maybe 60 months financially. You hire someone, you're looking at 25, 30 years, whatever your retirement system is set up around. So the obligations of those two is in competing force. Clearly, one officer is very expensive, multiple officers, but if you can find ways to bring the technology in and free those officers up. Mobile data did that for us. There was a study I read many years ago that by putting mobile data in the car where officers could take their own activity rather than having to do it over the voice, it was like a 60% increase in activity. I don't know that resulted in more arrests, but it got more things done efficiently through the system. There was more tracking that could go on. Those are the kinds of things that I think this conference, as I read through the presentations, I'm just really excited about the possibilities.
Yeah, and less officers isn't the answer. No. Officers can be used more effectively, and technology can be that force multiplier, which helps us get ahead of crime trends. And I would just say this. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, and in Canada, they went and looked at the back office and found the things that they could automate. And this is the stuff that people didn't like doing. So one of our committee members they started deploying bots, and there's a number. I don't think there's anything this time on that, but it's just amazing to me how creative. You take one application in one place and put it in another, and find out how much better we can do it. Look what APHIS did for fingerprints.
I can't rephrase this any way other than rhetorically. I'm going to ask Dan to answer the question, which to me is a little obvious, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. Is there ever a more important time for police executives to tune into technology and to attend a technology conference, which is going to discuss everything about their technology needs going forth? Maybe even we're 20 years out now, maybe even more. Not that we're expert on that level, but we see what's coming. Ever more important time to tune into technology if you're a police leader? Doesn't seem so.
Absolutely not. In fact, piggybacking off on what Craig and Jim have said, where the use of technology can free up your officers for more, to be able to get more done. I always hate the term doing more with less, but I think it allows them to be more efficient to do it. One of the nice things about this conference is one of the more overlooked aspects from a police executive is your most critical and your most expensive asset, which is your officers themselves. So we're actually putting on we also have a wellness component for this particular conference, just so, and you don't think about that with technology, but we're going to show how you could actually use technology to protect your officers, protect that valuable asset, making sure, because every time an officer goes down with either a physical ailment or an emotional ailment, you've lost all the money and the effort that you put into that particular asset, you've lost them at that time. So what we're going to be showing at this conference also is how you can use technology to protect that valuable asset, especially in 2021, when we've never seen our industry under fire more than we've seen it this year, truthfully. So that was the really long-winded answer, Patrick, to say, yes, absolutely, this is a critical time for this.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, we're also going to, I want to call them, I don't want to say old or the favorites, but you're going to hear from NLETS. You'll hear from, National White Collar Crime Center. You'll hear from our normal partners in the space in addition to technology. So plenty of updates that are, I want to say our regular updates, but you look forward to those. They're going to be part of the technology conference as well. All the new stuff and updates on every endeavor in our space that is important to you. So the regular folks will be there to give you all the, where they are, state of the state in things like NLETS and others. So that's good. I thought we might sort of start to conclude with, is there one last thing you'd like to remind, our members about, and those that are viewing this webinar, what they shouldn't miss? I'm just gonna start it off, give you a little time to think and say, I still think the budgeting, small police departments, making this work for departments that don't have $100 million budgets. I think technology discussion is more important to them than it is to the big cities and countrywide police forces, right? I mean, New South Wales and 20,000 police officers. Yes, it's important, but there are lots of police forces around the world that are 100, 200, 50, 20. And I think that's one of the things that you'll get from the technology conference is an adaptation to your level of need and the scope of what you can afford, but things that you shouldn't miss out on doing. And I think that's an important part of the conference, which I want to make sure that our members know, and invited guests, that we're definitely going to take that into account and tailor it to your needs. So it's not just for the $200 million, $500 million police agencies of the world. Anyone else? Anything else? That's
Hey,
one
Pat,
final.
I joined the ICP a lifetime ago because of the training. Initially, that's why I stayed. That's why I'm a life member. That's why I've been around. What dawns on me is that ICP Tech Conference has made me a very educated consumer in that public safety and criminal justice space. And I think that's one of the advantages of coming to the Tech Conference. I would note that there will be a special presentation on the Law Enforcement Cyber Center, which IACP runs with the help of PERF and NW3C. That's all about pointing an executive and his staff at resources. So from the standpoint of value added, come up your game in terms of being that consumer in the criminal justice space.
Yeah, I want to dovetail into that smaller department component, Patrick. I think the piece here that, as I think about it, we really haven't talked about the communication side of the committee. We've talked a lot about the technology side of it, and the communication side of it, which this program was built on initially. In this instance, we are getting ready to go forward with some really heavy-duty stuff as we look at the push to talk to LTE and how that's done on wide area networks, and the value added that provides for those small departments to improve interoperability in a way with a really low end cost, and maybe no cost. So I think there's some presentations on that topic, and I think it's stuff that things like that there's something here for everyone.
Yeah,
Dan, anything else for you?
Yeah. I'd just like to piggyback a little bit again off of Craig. One of the beauties of this conference is you're in a smaller agency and you may not be able to have the training budgets that a New York, a Chicago, San Francisco has, but nonetheless, you're able to come to this conference and you're able to get a wide array of different topics, and like I said, pertinent topics, relevant ones, and ones that are today. The best example I can give is there was a Tesla crash 2 days ago, and supposedly it was on autopilot. an officer today isn't going to, a lot of them don't know how to investigate a case like that. What the unique aspects of an investigation is for a vehicle it's in that type of configuration, driving on autopilot. Coming to this conference, you'll be able to go to a breakout and hear about that. Hear some of the techniques. See what some of the tools are out there, and how to competently do the job, like I said, that the public expects and demands. And I use that as one example. Cyber is another one. You're going to check. I mean, I tell everyone, check out the agenda. You're going to see an array of different relevant, timely topics.
And because I'm the moderator, I can add one more, even though I said one each and I added them. Officer wellness, and that's becoming a digital landscape, right? How we ensure that officers and civilian and analysts are well. So their health is it's a technology issue now. Well, it's a human issue, of course. Don't mean to dehumanize it, but it's technology based right now. So I just happened to be looking at the roster of events, and I said, wow, I forgot about that one. Officer wellness is very important. And it's all based on technology, as is everything else. The real connective tissue amongst us is the digital computerized world that we're in. And this technology conference kind of puts it in a easy to see basket. We'll all be together soon doing conferences in person, but this one is really effective. And we've got a great list of speakers and educational events and industry representatives that'll talk about the latest and greatest. So it's all in one place. For now, we're virtual, but I really do think you're going to like that. Anything else from the panelists? Any final thoughts?
I just look forward to seeing everybody in May at the conference.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to thank Lieutenant Colonels. I don't think I've ever said that before. Alan and Emerson and Director Mahoney for their time. And on behalf of Bonnie Locke and the CJIS Committee, thanks for letting us moderate this. We always feel like we're a connection point between things because the data is really what's important. And we remind you that it's May 17th through the 19th. You can register now at theiacp.org. And we invite you to tune into this webinar, tell your friends about it, your colleagues, et cetera, so they can get a preview of the tech conference. And we will see you there, and of course, see you in the fall at the main event. And we'll all be together and healthy. So thanks for tuning in. Thanks to the panelists. And we'll see you real soon at the tech conference, May 17th through the 19th. Thanks, everyone.